That's what it is. Yeah.
Operations Board meeting will now order. Mr. Watkins.
Pledge allegiance to the United States of America, to the republic that stands one nation, God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The board call the roll. Mr. Alcorn. Ms. Bailey is not attending. Mr. Banks.
Present.
Bennett Parker. Ms. Bomke. Here. Ms. Crystal. Here. Ms. Franklin. Mr. Kelly.
Here.
Ms. Lamb. Here. Ms. Lawson. is not here. Ms. Mitchell. Here. Mr. Skinner.
Here.
Mr. Smith.
Here.
Mr. Stork.
Present.
Mr. Walkinshaw.
Here.
And Madam Chair.
Mr. Dalton for our safety.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just as a reminder, we do have both evacuation routes out of this room today are open. Evacuation route out to the double doors. Of course, the stairwells to the right. Don't take the elevator if we have to evacuate in case of an emergency. And in the AED devices out in that room as well, or out in that area as well. The second or other evacuation route is clear through the single door, and just follow the pathway signages. Primary 911 callers, I've got Robert in the back. He'll be backed up by Cindy in the back as well. Primary AED, CPR, first aid, Chris Henry in the back will be primary, and I'll take secondary. There are no, after going through the space and stuff, there are some minimal tripping hazards, but the pathways to the restrooms and the evacuation rooms and stuff like that are clear. So that's my safety moment.
I'll approve our agenda. Do I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Ms. Bonke and seconded by Mr. Banks. All those in favor of the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. Next, we'll move to our minutes of the November meeting. Does anyone have any corrections? Hearing none, is there a motion and a second to approve the minutes of the November? By Mr. Skinner, seconded by Mr. Walkinshaw. All those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Passes. This is a bittersweet day for me that this is my last meeting here, but on VRE. It's also the last meeting for two other board members, and so we'll be recognizing those folks during our later agenda item. And I'd also like to offer my congratulations to former VRE Operations Board member Pam Spesky, the Vice Mayor of Manassas, who was elected Wednesday to serve as the Chair of the National Capital Region Transportation Planning Board for 2022. So certainly wish her well in that role. And of course, as we continue upon the holiday season, I hope everyone's healthy and happy on holiday here, and look forward to continuing to see you throughout this festive month. Into the CEO report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First off, I want to introduce a new VRE staff member. Chet, if you don't mind, stand up. For those in the room, Chet's in the back of the room there. This is Chet Dunstan. He's come on board as our marketing, communications, and engagement manager. Chet comes to us with a plethora of experience in not only marketing, but specifically digital marketing, data mining, data analysis. From a couple of different entities. I will point out that he does speak our language, frankly, because he has done time, but has had experience at Amtrak. So just wanted to join me in welcoming Chet to our team. Chet will, of course, come on board. He's drinking from a fire hose right now, trying to get trying to get acclimated with VRE, but he'll not only get engaged specifically in our marketing, in community relations efforts, but he's obviously participate in our ridership recovery team as well. So again, welcome, Chet. Glad to have you on board. Okay, next up, we again continuing with our stakeholder and jurisdictional outreach. As I've mentioned before, obviously a lot of the training that we had that we routinely have conducted with our jurisdictional partners and other stakeholders sort of died off a little bit during COVID, and we wanted to pick some of that up. So this month we were fortunate to host the FBI and Stafford County for canine training. This happened on December 7th. This time, of course, this happened at our Crossroads Maintenance and Storage Facility. The staff educated participants on railroad safety and train familiarizations. And I don't know about you, but I just can't get enough of showing pictures of the dogs and stuff. I mean, it's just the last couple of months have just been great. So anyway, hats off to our Safety and Security Administrator, Charlotte Norse, and the Mechanical Operations team and others for continuing to set these up and continuing to have these exercises out in our maintenance and storage facilities and other facilities as well. Shifting to ridership, total ridership for the month, as you can see, compared to October, we had one fewer service day, but essentially flat from October. Our average daily ridership, of course, has ticked up finally over 3,000, again, with one fewer service day. On-time performance for the month of November at 88%. Again, slowly increasing over previous months, and this is split up between the two lines. And just to continue with just some little bit of a deep dive and stuff on what those delays are. More specifically, we're still seeing congestion-related delays out there. I will say, last month, I addressed a public comment about a specific train 327 that had been consistently departing out of Union Station, not on time. And so since the last operations board meeting, that train has only been late 4 times for an average delay of a little over 5 minutes. We instituted an operational change on December 6th, and since then that train had only been late once, and that was by a completely unrelated issue as it relates to Amtrak. So just wanted to come back and address that comment that we had as well. So still chipping away at the congestion opportunities, and frankly, things are getting better, and we hope that the metrics catch up to that. So project spotlight for the month. Last month, under our state of good repair projects, I highlighted equipment asset maintenance or a rolling stock, and of course a companion program to that is our facility asset management. I just want to point out that covers a whole host of things: repaving parking lots, modernizing elevator systems, upgrading station platforms. And this is not like a station rehabilitation program where we go and do the entire station. This is taking it a systems approach and addressing state of good repair needs more on a system level. As you can see, we do have like several generators out there. So this is a lot of that. A lot of this effort is obviously visible to our riders and the public, but some of this is not. Like a generator. You're on an elevator, you lose power, commercial. You have a generator that can kick on and continue operating the elevator. Very transparent to the person, fortunately, that's inside the elevator. Anyway, just wanted to highlight that and let everybody know that those things continue on. And then I did want to take a moment, simply based on the time of year we are, and just end with, throughout 2021, the VRE staff obviously have been many challenges and also have realized many successes as well. Not all of our staff have worked from a remote work environment. We have several staff that, like our mechanical operations team, which includes our warehouse staff, our facility maintenance team, our operations communications team. And of course, they've always been on the front line out there. And again, this is just VRE staff in addition to our contracted service providers. Throughout the year, most of our staff participated at one level or the other in the implementation of our enterprise business solution, business processes. Our design and construction teams successfully launched 3 projects into construction beyond the mobilization phase. Our project development team continued to progress major projects through conceptual, preliminary design, environmental, and of course, we started an update to the 2040 system plan. Our safety, operations, mechanical, and ridership recovery teams continue to adopt and respond to the current environment that's been thrust upon us. And so just a plethora of activity. And I just wanted to, just take this moment and really a shout out to the VRE staff. But I also want to make a point that we do integrate with our partners at both PRTC and MBTC, and we are many levels integrated with those staffs as well. So and we really appreciate that relationship and all the things that both those entities do for us as well. So anyway, just wanted to say that. And then finally, because he's actually in the room, did want to point out that in the back, our Comptroller, Alex Buchanan, you're going to have to stand up, buddy, for the people in the room. Alex has been with VRE. Alex started March of 2001. So this year he was a 20-year employee. Alex first took a position as a customer advocate, okay? And then subsequently he got involved in working with our capital division and actually involved in a new fare collection system that is now 20 years old, of course. But Alex also, so then from that, Alex has progressed in a lot of roles throughout the accounting group. And but also I want to point out that Alex has participated in VRE's longstanding professional development and tuition assistance program. And so through this program previously, Alex earned an associate's degree in accounting. And then really what I want to say is earlier this week, December 14th, Alex earned his Bachelor of Science in Public Administration with a concentration in Administration and Management with honors. So again, with Alex here, but I do want to read something to you, and this is going to, there was a note, or this is a message that Alex put on his cover letter when he initially applied for his job in 2001.
Yeah. Wow.
You can run, but his cover letter he wrote, "It has always been my personal dream to work for an organization that I can feel passionately about. I believe that the Virginia Railway Express is that organization. I have always loved the railroad since my earliest memories. This position can be my doorway to a long and fruitful career with the Virginia Railway Express where we can grow together." What foresight, right? 20 years later, this is where Alex is standing. So finally, Madam Chair, just wanted to, Alex is an example. Alex is a good example of a good representative of the staff that we have. And he continued pursuing his post-secondary education even during all the clunkiness of the last couple. Madam Chair, that is the.
Thank you, Alex. That's an awesome welcome. Are there any other questions for Mr. Dunn? Hearing none. Which is VRE writers and public to be taken electronically. Written comments opened last Friday and closed at 8 a.m. this morning. The comments have been forwarded to all members and will be attached to the minutes. Will the clerk please read?
Yes, Madam Chair. We had one submitted public comments. I have not sent forwarded this to you yet, but I will. It's from a Miss Mary Ann Jenkins from Manassas. Her comment is, the whistle blowing of your trains through Manassas City are piercing at times. End of message. It's the only one we have.
Madam Chair. Let me just, for those that, let me just respond this way, just for information. So through the city of Manassas, there's 7 grade crossings, okay? And through this area, it's also a quiet zone. So from 10 p.m. at night till 7 a.m. in the morning, there's not a requirement to blow your train horn unless the engineer sees somebody in the right of way and stuff. So I wanted to, there is a designated quiet zone out there. And then I'll also say that our transportation managers, that is one of the tests and follow-up that the transportation managers, they have a way to effectively go back and see if trains are blowing their horns inside that quiet zone, and frankly, to ensure that they're blowing their horns, from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. as well. So I just wanted to make that clarification. It's obviously within a city limits. You've got 7 railroad crossings. There is a quiet zone there. And I can tell you that we are doing it in a compliant way, particularly when the train horns that need, the requirement to have train horns blow from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. required. That's federal law. That's not something that. So anyway, just wanted to make that comment.
While we do encourage members of the public to submit comments electronically, we are still open to the public and wanted to check and see if there are any members of the public here to speak to us. See any? We move on to our first action item, which is 9A, a resolution to accept the FY21 audited financial report and authorize the CEO to forward to the commissions. Is there a motion and a second to approve resolution 9A? It's been moved. Well, first, and I was actually going to turn it over to Ms. Crystal as chair of the audit.
So we had the opportunity to meet with our auditors this morning as the audit did not have quorum, and so I don't bring you a formal recommendation. The sense of the committee that we do very much support this action. I don't want to scoop our auditor who is with us, I think, to give us a presentation. But suffice it to say, it is a no new situation with a straightforward audit with no major findings for us. And happy to take any questions about the committee's deliberations, which were relatively straightforward.
We do also have our auditor here with us to make a report. So with that, I'll turn it over to
Chair, before I get started, I'd just like to thank Mark and Alex and their staff at VRE. For you all that may not be aware, to undertake an audit while undertaking the implementation of a new accounting system software and to come out with a clean opinion, that just speaks kudos to their staff and a great job that they do there, because implementing a new auditing or accounting system is something you only want to do once in your career. So kudos to them for getting that project taken care of, and also a clean audit opinion. As Katie stated a moment ago, the audited financial statements, there's only several pages in the report that belong to PB mayors. Those are the opinions. There's 2 opinions included in the financial statements of VRE, one on the financial statements themselves, and then one that's issued under government auditing standards, which requires us to come in and evaluate internal controls and things of that nature of the organization. Both those opinions are unmodified, which are clean opinions. That's the highest opinion that we can issue as auditors. So Couple things to point out, the financial statements this year, they did include an 28.3 million in CARES funding that was received. That money flows through PRTC, which we also audit PRTC and was audited and subject to a single audit there. There was no findings with that, with the way the money was spent, and the money was being spent in compliance with the guidelines that the federal government has established. The only at the end of the fiscal year 2020, net position of VRE had increased 12.3 million over the prior year. Of that, 131 million of the net position that is available for spending for operations. The remaining portion of the net position, approximately $3 million is related to investment in the capital assets, things of that nature, the trains, the bricks and mortars that you all have. Only other item I will point out, the pension liability. This is something that I get asked by a lot of organizations and entities. VRE's employees participate under PRS through PRTC. The pension liability for the year for both organizations combined did increase 1.8 million, but you're still fully funded or not fully funded, but very well funded at 91% at the end of the fiscal year. And that liability is based on actuarial numbers of 2020. So you're actually a year behind. I expect that liability to probably swing the other way this year due to the rebound in the stock market and things of that nature, the investments that are the underlying assets that are held by the pension plan. Other than that, we did issue a management letter this year. The only items included in that management letter relate to upcoming GASB pronouncements. There is a significant one on the horizons for most organizations and entities throughout Virginia, and that relates to leases and GASB statement number 87. So that'll be a pretty interesting undertaking for Mark, Alex, and their staff. So other than that, I have nothing else to report related to the audit. And if there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Is there any questions? Excellent report.
Credit to our finance team.
Any other comments? A motion made by Ms. Crystal, seconded by Mr. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Abstentions, the motion passes. The next item is our approval of our nominees for our 2022 VRE Operations Board officers. Last month, I asked a member from each commission to serve as a nominating committee. Greatly appreciate Mr. Alcorn from TC and Ms. Baumke from PRTC for their service. And our master agreement and bylaw requires the chair to alternate positions. And so that requires that the chair will be from PRTC next year. And with that, I'll turn to Mr. Alcorn to present.
Very much, Madam Chair. We actually do not have a slate of TBVs. So anyway, thank you very much, Madam Chair, for your leadership on this, and also to Ms. Baum. There is in the bylaws, as you said, a requirement for alternating leadership role as chair between the two commissions. Also, there's also a tradition with C portion, both Fairfax and either Arlington. So tried to maintain the nominating committee, that tradition as well. So that's why there'll be a little bit of a twist to this. We're also frankly trying to avoid burnout and trying not to go back to the well, for any one of us overall. And we want to give everybody a chance to be volunteer for service on this. So I'm very happy to put forward the nominating recommendations that Ms. Franklin be the chair, Mr. Walkinshaw be the vice chair, and Mr. Banks be the treasurer. And then I would also are recommending that the secretary position be held open until our next meeting when there is a new appointee from Alexandria to this committee. So coordinated that with Mr. Isaac doesn't create any immediate problems, but frankly, it does give us an opportunity to continue tradition from the side. So I'd be happy to make that motion.
Second.
And a motion by Mr. Alcorn, seconded by Ms. Baumke. Are there any questions or this item?
Fine with it and everything else like that, but we have this conversation almost every year that we have southern jurisdictions that kind of get lost in the discussion. And they're now representing a large part of the ridership, significant part of the ridership. Just point out in the early days of VRE, we usually, that's why Fredericksburg has never asked, nor will ask for a position on the executive committee. Ridership is minimal. But I would ask that, again, following years, we start realizing that there are jurisdictions south of Prince William that significantly represent a large portion of the ridership, which is not on the executive committee. Thank you.
Mr. Kelly, I would also note that we asked for volunteers for the executive committee, and so our leadership were chosen from who wish to serve, but certainly recognize the point. I think.
Chair, I just want to say, it's my concern too. Yes, and I do recognize that you have that in Stafford County, we've got 4 board members. So 3 members. Makes it a little bit more challenging. So I definitely appreciate, at least for the northern jurisdiction, that thought of leaving the position open. So maybe that would be something you would consider.
Can I jump on that? No offense to what the Northern Virginia delegation's view is, this is an organization that goes from all the way down south, and maybe the secretary position should actually be, to be determined, a southern jurisdiction representative.
Procedural question on that. So I know our bylaws specify that the chair alternate, and I know it's been custom to balance the executive. Well, is that is the balance of the whole executive committee spoken to in the bylaws, or are the bylaws silent?
I turn that over to Mr. McIsaac. I also was under the same assumption that sort of traditionally there's been 2 members from PRTC and 2 from NVTC. And my understanding was also that we would leave the secretary position blank for now with a new nominating committee or revisitation from the nominating committee in January to make that recommendation. Mr. McIsaac.
Madam Chair, I am hitting the bylaws right at this moment. I recall there's something to that. 2 of the offices should come from MVTC. MVTC. That certainly has been the practice.
Yeah, I appreciate Mr. Kelly. And I don't know if there's a process for us to review our bylaw. This is something that this is a good point. I mean, frankly, just didn't want Fairfax County to have. Given the tradition. So that's
Well, the point is I'm not saying anything. I understand that. It just, this is the conversation we seem to have every year when it comes to this. And And frankly, again, if you just take Stafford and Spotsylvania, they represent a significant amount of ownership compared to some of the Northern Virginia jurisdictions that continue to serve.
Madam Chair. Yeah, I just want to say, since I've been on this board, Matt has been on this board at only one. Did we not have that representative from the South? Was the one that was taken off on the very next year because Prince William had something, and you know, at that point, we knew that the people we had, this is not saying any people. It worked out fine, and the next year I was put in as vice chair. So, you know, it is important, very, because say there's a lot of money that flows out of here down to the 7 jurisdictions. We should really have someone on the board to watch out for us. This is not simply taken into bylaws. I know we've never had this other than the one part for it, but we decided to let it go that way. You know, I'll just say that why it's important is for the 11 years I've been on this board, Spotsylvania received 58.4. We're in a great location because people leaving that portion of Virginia want to stop and get gas there. On the way back, they get gas there because they stop in the heavy traffic So this isn't, this needs to be taken very serious, but especially with Fredericksburg, that money is important to them, and it is for us too. Stafford, everybody else. I don't think it's a wise move. Stay away from that. So I would ask that whatever you're holding for the next meeting, fill the other spots. I would hope somebody from the south to be.
If we can change the bylaws, I think it's getting working.
So, I was on the nominating committee. This was something that we recognized. I did not even talk to my colleagues down south about this. But I recognize that it is an issue. I think that we do need to take this up with the bylaws. As you know, Ms. Lawson has agreed to step aside in this due to her run for Congress. And we had changes on our board. So there are a lot of factors that went into this, but I do agree with my colleagues down south that probably need to have a conversation maybe before this is voted on. First quarter.
I mean, I think it's always healthy to have a conversation about the bylaws. I mean, I do think the equal representation of the two commissions is an important part of, it's in the bylaws for a reason, and I think that's important. That doesn't preclude someone from Spotsylvania or Stafford at any point. I don't think we would want to be in a situation where we have 3 members of the executive, 1 commission, 1 from the other, which at the current juncture, current proposal, I think the only way to achieve what we achieve.
Don't we also have the opportunity, and I won't be here, but don't you have the opportunity to not just waive the bylaws for that, but actually waive that particular portion for you? Can't you put that in until it gets balanced? Just in recognition that, and I feel the same way, you guys did a good job, but I brought this up last year. And it's just, I think that it's myopic to not think about that ridership that when we started, we didn't have Spotsylvania. We didn't have that station, and it's doing really well. So it's like, I think that, consideration of our input and our desire to be a greater part, of that. And we are, I think we are, is that we've been a great supporter, great, anything you want. I mean, that's because that's what this committee does. And I just offer, think about us. Apparently everybody thinks Stafford's part of Northern Virginia. So we laughed about this for redistricting.
But just as a point of information, the language about having 2 officers. To say at the same time, if fences are divided, it's certainly way free to do what you want. The process and actually get. But you can certainly suspend them.
Thanks. I mean, one thing we might want to consider is amending the bylaw. So maybe there should be an at-large member of the executive committee, so that I'm not sure this is the last time we're going to have that balance problem. But anyway, I want everybody to think.
Mr. Skinner, who is the other appointee PRTC in Spotsylvania?
And that's our PRTC, and on VRE, Ms. Frazier will be Laura Hayes will be the alternate. Back to PRTC, it will still remain Tim McLaughlin and David Ross as alternates. It's a really weird. That is Lori's second one. And that Ms. Frazier is the alternate. She'll move up. Those are We did it at last board meeting. So I'm not sure if they sent it up to you yet. But not, but you will receive it. We have made it official.
I guess I do have a question for Mr. McIsaac. I was assuming that we would fill the secretary position in January, but is there any downside to giving ourselves a couple of months to sort of work through this issue?
No, you're not under any compulsion to appoint. For a while. The one thing I would note that talk about that, well, chair has the authority to do this. Provide something active. You might want to include that in your vote.
Give us some time to.
I have no problem. I just want everybody to realize what has been done. And there has been one occasion I know that I didn't have to sit down. Because people were phenomenal. They still are. So I didn't really have a big deal about it. So focusing. Don't want to stray away from it because then it falls through the crack and it becomes 10 years of that was fine. Somewhat confident about that person. Plus, it's holding back as you move up in the treasurer and then into secretary, vice chair and that. So you've got to work on that. You start at the bottom and you work your way up. Chair. Everybody, Mr. Go. Speaking of chair. Really, it's just, look, I'm not here. I mean, this is not going to affect me. It will affect spots of being staff and city credit. I think what they're saying, consideration for what you want.
So Madam Chair, if I might ask to amendment to amend your motion to include something regarding conversation the first quarter into bylaws discussion.
Yes, that would be a friendly.
Second that.
I would just also note too that I think one of the challenges that we face with this process is turnover on this board, and obviously that can sometimes be a little unpredictable. I know Mr. Walkinshaw served as Secretary of Treasurer his first year on the board. I am in this position because of turnover on the board, so we can only control so much, but I certainly appreciate the need to have that conversation. So with that, there is a motion and a second. Is there any other on this item?
And Madam Chair, I'd also like to amend my motion further to address the issue, which is that it would also include that the chair would have interim responsibility as acting secretary. Say that one.
The chair would have it, or
So the chair would have interim point.
well, the bylaws allow the chair to just do that already. I didn't know if you wanted to motion just to make it who the acting secretary.
So I guess I don't need a motion for that. The bylaws already.
The bylaws address it actually.
Okay, then never mind. Sorry.
Any other questions or comments on this item? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Next item is 9C, a resolution to refer the amended FY 2022 and the recommended FY operating capital. Turn it over to Mr. Schofield.
Thank you, Madam Chair, board members. Before I begin, I would just like to take a moment to express my appreciation to two VRE staff members, one of whom is here and who you've already heard quite a lot about, Mr. Buchanan. Also to Andre Abdullah, who couldn't be here today. The materials that we give to you, they are just sort of the tip of the iceberg, and there's a tremendous amount of work that goes into developing all of that, and two of them lead that for the operating and the capital budgets. And I just want to express my appreciation to them for all the work that they've put into it this year. So with that, so
We are presenting the recommended FY 2023 operating and capital budgets to you for your consideration, and then to the commissions for their adoption in January of next year. Despite the challenges that are being presented by the ongoing pandemic, we are presenting you with a balanced budget. Projected expenses are supported by reasonably expected revenues. Our recommended FY 2023 operating and capital budget together totals $185 million. This budget will support the continued operation of 32 daily VRE trains and does not include any changes to fares. The total recommended jurisdictional contribution is $18.3 million. Our total recommended operating budget is $97.8 million, which includes about $6 million worth of existing debt payments. That represents an increase of approximately $8 million or 9% over the original approved FY 2022 budget. Primary drivers of those increases are diesel fuel, up by over $1 million based on increasing market prices, increases to our host railroad access fees, in particular for Amtrak, based on changes in the Northeast Corridor Commission model that we use to determine those costs. Increased train operations and maintenance costs, our contracts with Eolus. Those annual cost increases are linked to inflation, which of course has been significantly higher over the last 12 months. We are returning to our usual 2% operating contingency, which had been reduced down to 1% for last year. And we are projecting continued increases in our liability insurance, given the ongoing turmoil in those global markets. We are not asking for any staff increases in fiscal year. I want to speak about three things that have really impacted the budget this year at a high level because of the pandemic. If you were here last year, this slide should look fairly familiar because we had the same issues last year. And as Rich has noted, and I've noted, we really are about a year behind. Hope that we would be. So the first point is that, again, we did not conduct a rider survey in October of this year like we normally do, given the feeling that it would be challenging to administer and also not produce reliable results. So we are continuing to use the FY 2021 jurisdictional percentages on the subsidy based on the survey that we did prior to that. Number two, budget does not achieve that 50% recovery ratio from the fare box, meaning that half of the operating expenses to your revenues. Again, the board's direction has been instead to concentrate on continuity of operations, maintaining our level of service and service quality, and then to backfill those lost passenger revenues with the available. And then the third issue, again, like last year, we have not provided what we normally do, which is a 6-year projection of our expenses and revenues, looking ahead into the future. We certainly hoped that we would be able to do that at this time, but we just don't believe we have the vision, the clarity right now on what the return of ridership will look like to give you a reliable projection out that far. Again, as things clarify and as we begin to learn more, we will back that kind of a projection back to you. And that leads right into the issue, which is sort of overlaying all of this, ridership and revenue. Again, while we continue to see that sort of steady incremental growth month over month, it hasn't really been at the pace, obviously, that we wish. And we haven't really had that pop yet that we're looking for when the federal employers and employees really begin to go back to the office in greater numbers. I will take this moment to make a comment about the amended FY 22 budget. We had a number of relatively small expense changes in the 22 budget. The largest of those being an increase in the cost of diesel fuel and the creation of our general counsel department and a number of other sort of smaller puts and takes. We were able to accommodate all of those changes within the existing 22 contingency. The real changes on the FY 22 budget are more on the revenue side. So we have reduced our projection for passenger revenue for FY 22 from 18 million down to 11 million, reflecting the slow return of ridership. That is partially balanced out by higher state operating assistance had originally budgeted, but the remainder of that will be backfilled by CARES and PRISM money. So then that leads into sort of a lower starting point for fiscal year 23. The fiscal year 23 budget assumes average ridership across the year of approximately 8,000 riders per day, and we assume that that will hopefully be ramping up over the course of the year. If we do hit this projection, given our best estimates of what the average fare per rider will look like, that would generate approximately $25 million worth of passenger revenue. That is still just less than 60%, excuse me, of what a regular pre-pandemic year would look. And again, if we do hit that projection, then we would expect to use approximately $24 million worth of pandemic relief money fiscal 23. And that really is kind of a dollar for dollar swap. Every additional dollar that we get from passenger ridership is $1 that we don't have to use out of that. And as I've noted there on the last bullet, beyond just that sort of top line ridership number, there are some sort of nitty gritty details that we'll be watching. You know, how many times per week are riders riding? Are we seeing changes in the average trip length? Other things like this that beyond just that top line number will impact the overall amount of revenue. Shifting from the operating budget to something that's a little brighter, the capital budget. The overall outlook for our 23 to 28 capital improvement program is generally positive, despite the pandemic. A lot of the political and legislative actions that have been taken over the past couple of years, the creation of the CROC, the state's commitment to the access fees, and of course the whole Transforming Rail in Virginia program, those have really, and then the creation of the VRE, those have really created an environment that is very supportive of VRE's long-term growth. Given our current estimates, our total project costs in the 6-year CIP are approximately $1.1 billion. That's the middle column there. Of that total, approximately $736 million is already has committed monies, and then the remaining amount is currently not funded. As I had mentioned before, inclusion of some expansion rolling stock, rail cars and locomotives in the out years of that CIP, really beginning in fiscal 28 and then carrying on beyond that to 2030 and beyond. That's what's really driving that high number on the funded dollar amount. We do have a couple of other projects more in the near term where we do have to also pursue some funding, specifically the Lafont project and the Broad Run expansion. But in general, I think the capital improvement program is looking good. Projects are continuing and creating a good environment for VRE's continued growth. With that, Madam Chair, I would be happy to take any questions.
Yeah, thank you. Mark, thank you very much. And I want to frame up an issue that motion, I guess I would be. And it relates to subsidies and federal funding. So Mark, how much federal subsidy do we spend?
Yes, we have not dipped into any of the PRISM money yet. So we have approximately $70 million left of the PRISM money. We have, up until this point, held aside the rescue plan money, which is approximately $118 million for strategic capital investments. And we are on track to run through the rest of the CARES Act money towards the end of this week.
So we're roughly, 85 million at this point?
Probably.
Yes. Okay. And so also, Mark, you had provided this committee an analysis of an idea if if instead of stopping any reduction in subsidies, that we would step down. I believe as part of that analysis, you look to see, using certain assumptions, when the federal funds would be expended and done. And I believe with one of those assumptions, basically assuming that we got back 10,000 riders a day, that we would run out of funds in first quarter of 2026, FY 2026, if we went back to the full subsidy that our jurisdictions pay. If we step down the subsidy and use federal money to use that now, we would run out 1 quarter soon. Is that correct?
That is correct. And you noted that there are a lot of assumptions that go into the analysis. Obviously, if we have more ridership, then any particular amount of the pandemic relief lasts longer. If we have less ridership, then we use up any amount of that more quickly.
So basically, we're looking at in 3 or 4 years, the federal money is going to run out, likely. And the question is, basically, do we continue as we have in the current fiscal year, with at least use a portion of the federal funds to reduce our jurisdictional subsidies? And frankly, in Fairfax County, we do have significant transit needs. Our fare box revenues are down for our connector buses. And frankly, we could, we have some immediate needs that would benefit from using some of this federal money to step down rather than just stop. So that's something that I'd be happy to speak to more later. I just want to give everybody a heads up to get the discussion.
I'm going to build on Mr. Alcorn's comments. And Dr. Schneider, you might want to chime in on this too. Can you all give us maybe a 3-year out synopsis of what you think our tax revenues direction they're going in?
That you've seen?
I understand it in the first budget that was released last week, they were demonstrating revenue increases across the board. I'm sorry, yesterday, not last week. Revenue increases across the board, including some increases in gas tax. I don't know how that filters into the CROC amounts or.
There's a couple of key trends. One is consumption is consistent. Prices are high, but that's of course a commodity-based issue. In that respect, so the increase is there, but it's inflated. What we are seeing is a decline because of the electric vehicle movement. So the miles are increasing, total travel, but the motor fuels collection is staying consistent when in theory it should be going down, which means cars are traveling more. So you have those multiple points of aggregation. Consumption amounts have just increased, but that's not the ratio of miles traveled and the consumption aren't equal. So what that means is the electric vehicle portion is continuing to be a larger segment of that market.
Again, this comes back to discussions we've had for years. Long term, these dollars are going to start.
One of the key differentiators though with the motor fuels tax is, however, it's tied to inflation. I don't remember the specific components of it, but is it 5 years of increases and then it's inflationary?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I've got the escalation right, but I just know that aside from longer term trends about EV use and all of that, I think just in the what they're looking at for the Transportation Trust Fund, which includes fuel taxes as well as other taxes too. They're seeing a surplus of revenues for FY22 and an increase above what was expected in the 6-year plan previously, which includes increases in the gas tax collections for the next 6 years. Like I said, I'm not sure exactly how that trickles down into the PRTC portion of the gas tax. Kate, I don't know if you've got a sense from the NBTC.
So I guess the key element is that at least the transportation cost, Dr. Mitchell just mentioned, is made up of a whole range of different revenue sources, and that's a good thing. So yes, the gas tax, we may be seeing less from that, but there are other sources of revenue that make up that trust fund.
Yeah.
So we've just done some preliminary review of what we heard yesterday. In the NBTC district, it's anywhere between 6% growth from fiscal year 2023 anticipated from DRPT funding. So the state funding is looking good for operating and other support for public.
I'm more concerned with jurisdiction.
Yeah, so
And then jurisdictionally, that is tied where the flow down from that is just what proportion gets collected based on who pumps fuel. So when it gets to the motor fuels tax portion, now it's just a proportionality of how much fuel gets.
So when we're talking about correction of funding from jurisdictional standpoint, what we just talked about. We're looking at strictly who buys, what price, whatever.
And you just, and again, it's, so just to clarify one thing is the tax was 5 cents for 2 years, then indexed to inflation. I was just thinking of something different. Got that correct? So now you'll have, you'll have that amount for collection in the motor fuels portion of it. So now you've got the percentage, or the amount is then tied to that for the actual increase. I'm trying to remember how the legislation was written.
CPI.
Yeah, and so the amount flowing in, if all consumption remained consistent and price went up, then you get more tax increase. So that's the moving portion of the variable, but then it comes down to, for jurisdictionally, where did it get pumped? And that's what it comes down to. So if the gas station opens, and this happened in Manassas, for example, the state coded a gas station as in the city of Manassas, and it turned out to be in Prince William. That revenue was actually extracted from Manassas and then reallocated to Prince William. That's an example of the flow down.
So basically what we're looking at is strictly people buying gas and how much we, so the trend is for jurisdiction. Probably, would it be safe to say the trend jurisdictionally is not to be flat or potentially?
It's so hard to predict just because it's tied, price is that big driver. And then what gas stations open up in your district? That is actually one of the bigger issues. So can you capture someone pumping in your jurisdiction versus another would increase your, like, you should be in competition with Spotsylvania County for a gas station. In essence, if you hate to say it that way, but that's the reality. If there is a motor fuels tax and it's driven by jurisdictional lines and you want to increase your line in the budget, that is how you would increase how much money you draw on.
Okay, one last question. Let me just simplify it with an example. In your professional opinions, would you be, as a jurisdiction, with the current dynamics with gas and how we get it, making long-term transportation commitments on those monies?
I think my assessment would be there's not enough of a dynamic change. I mean, the motor fuels tax has been consistently performing over the past 20 years. And there hasn't been any singular event outside of price of fuel, which has radically impacted collection. So if you have the established baseline where you now have, you have, especially with the CROC, where it's the first 15, there's never been a time where you haven't been able to achieve that. So in terms of this, I think it's a safe resource to do. Plain and simple.
Well, CROC, I understand, because we are committed as an organization that money is in there. We split it up jurisdictionally. But if our revenues go down, our commitment is still to the 15. It's just a matter of more of it comes out of it to make. Thank you.
Just maybe related to Mr. Alcorn's comments, but slightly different. I mean, I do think we need to be about the ridership survey next year. And I think we need to be prepared to do that, even with the likelihood that ridership won't be dramatically higher than it is right now. So that might mean logistically, it's going to have to be conducted differently than it has been in the past. But I don't think we can continue operating under pre-pandemic ridership survey. So that might mean we need to be thinking now in terms of what do we need to do to be able to physically conduct that survey to take a look at
year, because that's our normal. That will be our normal. Bruce and I have this conversation a lot. I don't think there's gonna be a change. There's not gonna be a light switch that goes off where the federal government comes back to work. That's just not how it's gonna happen. I think it'll be higher than this year, but be a lot, but that's our new ridership, jurisdiction by jurisdiction. So we need to figure out how to conduct that survey and operate under based on that survey next budget.
I do want to just clarify something that I mentioned a few minutes ago, is that the governor's budget was released yesterday. They are projecting increases in statewide funding, but especially in the transportation trust fund. So there will be increases in statewide operating assistance that will come to VRE, as well as capital funding that will be available as well. I don't have those exact numbers yet because we will be running those numbers. There's a formula that we use to allocate across all the statewide systems. But I expect that we'll have that in January. So just wanted to make you all aware of that, that we'll have that information, get it to you all as soon as we can so that you all can factor it into your budget calculations. It may, though, as a result, you may want to consider whether or not utilizing those federal funds to offset jurisdictional subsidies, should you decide to do that, are the right way to go. Whether you want to use increased statewide operating assistance. But I'll, like I said, I can't tell you at this point in time exactly what that's going to look like.
We expect any mid-course corrections in the governor's budget? Understanding that we have a new governor coming in.
Like I said, I can just only speak to what was released yesterday. Yeah, I
Because traditionally there is correction.
no, it's very good news for everybody. I mean, I hope everyone realizes the significance of this. It's not just in transit. It is in our highway side and smart scale. We're going to see some pretty big increases in transportation funding over the next 6 years, compared to what was projected. So it's all good.
I have a question on the capital budget. You mentioned that 373 is unfunded, and you were referencing basically where that came from. Looking at the detail, and I don't know, part of that is the future, because you have 259 basically future, that's part of it. Then you also mentioned projects, dollar amounts for those projects that are unfunded.
So you're correct. The bulk of the unfunded amount is in those future years for the rolling stock. But our practice is, once a project is in the CIP, we include the total cost, even if it extends sort of beyond 2020 this year. The ones that are sort of more near term then still need to have some additional money. As you said, Pond, I believe, is about 22 or 23 billion, and Broad Run, which is down towards the bottom of the page.
So, I mean, the differential is 260. It's like $113 million is unfunded. I just was trying to get a sense of 22, 23. Is there any other big part of that, or if I'm looking at FY 2028 or FY 2027, there's numbers on here likely to be funded. If you want to take it offline and talk to me later about that's fine. I want to understand how it's separated between funded and unfunded.
I'd be happy to take it offline, and as soon as the meeting's over.
Anybody else has a question?
Sure.
To the budget subsidies. I recall from our last meeting, there was approximately $400,000 reduction in operating expenses. Still for items that you felt that you could do without for this coming.
Oh, yes, that's
Still in the budget.
The changes that we made back in October as we went and talked to each of the department heads.
Yes.
Yes, those are absolutely still in the budget.
at the right time to make these comments, whether it's when they're. I wanted to share that I approached the idea of extending the subsidy reduction into fiscal 2023 with some trepidation. I am. The point is, when we run out of federal money, existential conversation, and so to back up the date of that sooner before we have as much of a picture of what ridership is like, seemed short-sighted to me. I will say, sort of a further analysis provided by staff that Mr. Alcorn, I think, will summarize. It is the difference not of running out of federal money, precipitating that existential conversation. It's not the difference of moving that, for example, from fiscal 25 up to fiscal 20. It's really a matter of moving it back a few months from the very beginning of fiscal 26, which would be 2025, to maybe something more like, as I understand it, March or April of 2025. So I think it's reasonable to assume that the facts on the ground will not change enough in the amount of time that that zeroing out the subsidy reduction would buy us. That said, I'm not sure what my takeaway is here. I think I can subsidy reduction. I think perhaps my takeaway is just one that we have to start having these conversations as we've been doing outside of the budget. Approaching that cliff of federal aid, with no plan. Ridership has not recovered at least to the 10,000 riders. Staff is painfully aware of that as much as the board member. That's my own point. Supporting the subsidy step down rather than zeroing out.
Still actually agree with your comments. Questions or comments? Hearing none, is there a motion and a second to approve resolution 9C?
So. Second.
Mr. Walkinshaw, and by Mr. Alcorn, any further comments or discussion?
Sure. I would move an amendment that in the resolution as distributed to committee members, we reduce the jurisdictional subsidy contribution to a total of $13,544,100 with the change shown on the tab.
A motion to amend the resolution. Is there a second? Mr. Banks will now vote on that the main motion. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Abstentions? The amendment is now the main motion, so we'll now vote on resolution 9C as amended. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Passes. Next item is action items. Resolution. LED lighting. Mr. Dalton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We seek authorization to issue a sole source contract with Technoware for the amount stated in the resolution plus a contingency for a total amount to exceed $250,051. What this authorization will do will allow us to upgrade specifically the emergency lighting system on our, we say our original 71 new passenger rail cars, because the last 29 rail cars we had have already been upgraded to an LED circuit. So going back, we want to update specifically the emergency lighting system, which is very unique. It's very specialized. The lighting tubes are very expensive, and it's so unique that we've only been able to find one qualified supplier. And of course, that qualification includes the product has to meet a requirement that's required of us on all transit vehicles and stuff for smoke, flame, and toxicity. And they're the only supplier that has actually done that test and that qualification, and it does meet the limit. So hence the reason why it's sole source. So at the end of the day, this will we will of course replace the non-LED circuit. But those bulbs are commercially available. We can go and competitively solicit that. We're just really speaking about the emergency lighting system, which is a DC bulb, a direct current bulb versus an alternate. And so that's my summary, Madam Chair.
Is there any further questions or comments on this item? Those in favor, please say aye. Motion passes. We have 9E, a resolution to authorize the CEO to amend the exercising the third option year on.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Seeking authorization to amend the two contracts, one with James River Solutions of Ashland, Virginia, that actually delivers fuel to our Crossroads Maintenance and Storage Facility. And the other with Griffith Energy Services, which actually delivers diesel fuel to our Broadband facility. Former is the amendment is in the amount of $2,754,000 plus 10% contingency for total amount not to exceed $3,029,400. Recommended amount of $1,836,000 plus a contingency for exceed $600. Just as again, we do this about this time every year. What we're trying to do, of course, the existing option years don't expire until July 1 of 2022. But having your authorization to let us go out and amend those ahead of time, if we need to, it keeps us, it actually enables our ability to go out and continue to pursue those fixed price contracts in the event that our consultant recommends that we do so. So that's why we're asking for this 6 months in advance of the actual start. That's my summary.
Crystal, are there questions or further comments on this item? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Passes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The first information item 10A, just review the annual update for Transit Asset Management program for calendar year 2021. In this update, we do, there wasn't an update to the yearly milestones this year, but we have completed or continue not only on the best practices side, but continue to adhere to requirements as set forth by the ensuring that we're maintaining our assets in a state of good repair. One thing that happened this year, and it happens every 3 years or so, the minimum required 3 years, is that we are just now completing an entire asset assessment of all VRE assets across our entire network. So we're completing that right now. We actually have the draft assessment. We'll be doing some reviews and stuff of that at the beginning of the calendar year. And then I'll make sure that not only that the public has access to it through our website, but the operations board does as well. So a lot of good things continue on this program. You have in your packet the entire review for the year. And then next is the spending authority report. Just had 3 items up there: task orders, a couple of 2 Keolis Rail Services, Virginia, and then 1 for the glad to answer any questions on spending authority.
Seeing no questions, we will now move into a closed session. Secretary Washington.
Pursuant to the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, Sections 37. Virginia, I move that the VRE Operations Board convene a closed meeting for the purpose of discussing one matter involving the acquisition of real property, including rail operations and rail equipment storage. Discussion in public would adversely affect the bargaining position strategy of the commissions. Two, the investment of public funds related to service for all made public initially, the financial interest of the commission would be adverse. Three, consultation with legal counsel concerning the terms and conditions of the investment of such public funds. So moved.
Is there a second to this motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Abstentions? Passes.
So they just give us quarter.
The VRE Operations Board certifies that to the best of each member's knowledge and with no individual representing included closed session, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements under the Freedom of Information Act were discussed, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed session was convened, heard, discussed, or considered. So moved.
And moved by Mr. Walkinshaw, seconded by Ms. Crystal. All those in favor, please say aye. Abstentions? At this time, we'll move to Operations Board members' time. I'd like to recognize two members who are moving on to this board. First, Ms. Cindy Lamb. Ms. Lamb represented Stafford County on the Operations Board since 2018, first as an alternate, beginning in 2020 as a member. During her tenure on the board, she was a strong advocate for our riders, having been a herself. She served as an active member of the legislative committee, helping shape VRE's legislative agenda, state and federal laws, and we are grateful for her service to it.
Couple of pictures. There you go.
Anybody else that wants a picture with me? So we have our immediate past chair, Mr. Gary Skinner. He's a member of the VRE Operations Board while representing Spotsylvania County on the board. He served twice as chair and vice chair and once as secretary. During his second term as chair, he helped navigate the COVID-19 pandemic and hire a new CEO. It's quite an intense year. His greatest contribution to bringing Spotsylvania into the VRE family. He spent many years prior to joining the board advocating for a VRE station in the county. The 2015 opening of the Spotsylvania station was a testament to his efforts. During his 11 years of service to VRE, Gary has also been a part of the implementation of rent control, launch of VRE Mobile, completion of a second platform at Woodbridge and platform extension run, completion of their Crossroads warehouse, parking expansion at Broken, adoption of the VRE System Plan 2040, and celebration of VRE's 20th and 25th anniversaries. Now have Mr. Skinner come up.
Yeah, I just wanted to also, on behalf of the staff, just to memorialize that we were out there. In the month of November, and it was like 85 degrees and sunny. For those that were there, it was really, really nice day. So, but anyway, just wanted to let you memorialize that event. That's still a very important milestone for not only VRE, but staff. That was more modern stations that we had constructed in a long time. So with that, I'll put this down if you want. Or,
Sure.
yeah, it's a little just really appreciate everything you've done.
Madam Chair, may I say a few words? First of all, I want to thank you for being the chair this year. Done an outstanding job. Secondly, Franklin, I don't know what you get your mind, but 2 years as a chairman on the PRTC and then rolling into this job. You've done a wonderful job, and I know you'll be very successful at the being chairperson. All your work. Katie, you're probably one of the longest ones. Other than that, I appreciate everything you've done. You've always been here, volunteered for committees, and they should be very glad that they have you as an asset. So I appreciate what you've done and your family. Right, so he came out to be at Spotsylvania. So Meg, thank you very much for your friendship. Congratulations on being the president of VACO. Got a busy year ahead of you. Thank you for doing what you do for the VRE. Ms. Mitchell. I just can't tell you how nice it was to work with you and your personnel in your office. You have always supported VRE, and you've done a wonderful job. I hope the governor may be smart enough to keep you around because you really do know a lot about this transportation and VRE. And I don't think I could thank you enough for what you've done, VRE. Thank you very much for that. Real quick to Bob Snyder, I said this the other night, thank you. Great CEO for PRTC, has done marvelous things down there. And so best wishes to you. Steve, thank you for all your help. And I'm very happy that you are you're part of this board, Greg. I think it's very important as we go and move on to the Long Bridge that you have to have good representation and knowledge of what's going down in Richmond. Steve, you can do that. You've done it for as long as I've known you, and good luck. Katie, thanks for what you do. Appreciate your assistance and help with us. And Matt, you and I have probably known each other for a long time, and we will know each other for a longer time. And I will tell you this, you got to listen to what Matt says, because he knows the history. And just like the senior people here, listen to what they have to say, because they're pretty smart and they've been through this quite a while. That's the biggest asset you have right now is Matt Kelly. As you've seen, he brings up the history. History repeats itself. And that's not the history we may want to repeat on that. So everybody, thank you. Leslie, thank you for everything you've done. I call her up. I'll probably call her again because I probably won't find that email you sent me. Okay. But thank you for everything. Leslie's been great. We went out to Denver together. We went to a meeting out there. So she's a good asset for VR. All the members in the back, Joe, Mark, all of them. Thank you so much. And he's a lucky man because he's got a great staff that works for him. And I will tell you my last thing, you don't know how lucky you are until you know you're leaving and you look around the room and say, my God, I've had a great chance to be with great people throughout the years. Miss Cadigan is one. Mr. Jenkins is another. What a great two people they were. And there were more people, Prince William, but Maureen and I became very close. And I want to thank her and everybody else. And good luck with everybody. Good luck with the beer. Thank you. Oh, by the way, I love this guy. You know, sometimes you take him for granted, but Rich has been here for a long time. We've been through a couple CEOs and stuff like that. And Dale, who first got us into the VR, last name.
Same.
He's done a wonderful job. Rich, I'm so happy you're the CEO. And I knew you'd love it. One time, Rich did CEO. He needed a little bit more experience with that, and now he's got it. And you can see the type of job he does. And I know you people love it. They work for you. That's the most important. Rich, thank you very much.
Not a job because we do love it.
Of course, it would be. So I said earlier today that it was a bittersweet day. And that's because I'm moving on to a new role in the House of Delegates. And I'm to that role and looking forward to continuing with all of you, but be sad to leave the body as a member. It's been great to serve alongside all of you. Franklin she was chair of PRTC and Ms. Crystal as chair of NBTC. While VRE has always had a long history of chairwomen, this is actually the first year that VRE and our two positions have been chaired by women. And simultaneously, we also had all of our committee chairs were women, and NBTC and DRPT, and the Secretary of Transportation here in Virginia also led by women. It truly has been an honor and a privilege to serve with all of you. To thank all of you, especially thank Rich for your tireless dedication to VRE. You made my job a lot easier, and you do so much for the system. I also want to thank Leslie and Steve and Mark and all of the VRE staff. It's been a very difficult year, coming after a very difficult year as we still navigate through COVID. I'm truly grateful for all that you do for us. As I've sort of mentioned earlier, maybe I didn't actually seek out a spot on VRE leadership. I was voluntold into it by Sharon Mileva. And for that, I owe her a debt of gratitude. I had been told by my predecessor, Paul Smedberg, that of all the boards and commissions on which Alexandria council members serve and of all the regional boards, that VRE was the best because of the people on it and the true spirit of regional collaboration. And he was right. So I want to thank all of you for making that true, especially Gary and Katie as past chairs. I relied on you a lot and sought your advice and counsel. So thank you for taking the calls. And a special thanks to our committee chairs, Katie, Matt, Margaret, and Andrea. They did a fantastic job, and it truly takes a lot of dedication and commitment to lead one of our subcommittees. You have to be here early, show up late, and roll with the punches, and we have to reschedule or postpone because our meeting has changed. If only someone would give us the authority to hold those electronically. We might have to cancel them 90% of the time. But seriously, thank you to all of you for your service to VRE and to your home jurisdictions. It's been a privilege and an honor. Together over the past year, we've made progress in advancing VRE's System Plan 2040. We have furthered progress on numerous capital projects, such as those now under construction at the Crossroads Yard at Quantico and Walton Road. We advanced procurement of 21 new state-of-the-art rail cars, and we, of course, hired our full-time general counsel. We spent a lot of time doing that in little boxes on WebEx. And as much as I advocate for flexibility for electronic meetings, I have much preferred the in-person meetings that we were able to return to this year. Generally, I would pass the gavel on to the incoming chair at the January. Unfortunately, I won't be here. We weren't really sure if a ceremonial or electronic gavel passing would work so well. So I'm going to do that now, but before we do that, I think I'm supposed to stop for a picture.
Chair, while you do, since you got to introduce everybody, I just wanted to thank you so much for leading us this year. The commitment that you have made while holding down what I think I can count as 3 jobs, if campaigning for office is a third, has been remarkable. We've all benefited from the personal touch that you've taken to really take that extra time to build relationships with us and make sure we all invested in the future. On that style of leadership and the time committed to it, very inspiring. So thank you.
Ceremonial guy. Get to keep this. There you go. If I could just real quick, just to add to what you said, Chair Crystal, that, I found myself often in Chair Bennett Parker. We talked often. We had a lot of good communication, stuff like that. But I too found myself in it's like, oh man, maybe I'll just cut her some slack here a little bit, and not I'll give her another day, give her, but she's always been there. She is, I will say, she loves VRE and she loves what she does. So it's just been super special to work with you. And you have a huge fan base called the VRE staff. We've been the entire year. They've actually really stuff. So thank you for going through this year with us. Thank you very much. Well, it's ceremonial. Just, why not? Come on, let's just. Get the bangers out here.
Motion to adjourn?
Yes.
So sorry, one more operations board comments. Not nearly so emotional, but I did want to share with some sadness. I am next year while I chair the county board back at Arlington, so you will see less of me next year, and more of my colleague would be excited to take that instead. But if I can be a resource to anyone, please don't hesitate to call as an alternate. I'll look forward to staying involved and abreast of issues, and hopefully very much.
And I guess I'll say maybe before we adjourn, just thanking the nominating committee, and thanking VRE for entrusting me to lead as chair. And I know Supervisor Lawson isn't here, but thank her as well for her role during VRE and really speaking to me and challenging me to really move into this role. So looking forward to working with you all. And of course, if you have any questions, call you Elizabeth. Call me January. But thank you to you for all that you do, and good luck in assembly. And I know we'll have an advocate there. So thank you. Is there a second? Favor? Opposed? See you all next year.
It's been a journey.